Hey and welcome back to my channel. For those who are the first time here, my name is Zach. I'm 21 years old Russian who left Russia because of the war against Ukraine. Today I'm gonna tell you about Yevgeny Prigozhin, a billionaire, an oligarch, a friend of Putin, a head of private mercenary company Wagner, who are famous for fighting in Africa, Syria, and also in Ukraine. We will observe the journey of Yevgeny Prigozhin from a low-level criminal who used to burgle apartments of other people to a high-level criminal who are nowadays wanted by FBI, who created the biggest private military company in the world and one of the evil faces of this unjust war against Ukraine. As many friends of Putin, Yevgeny Prigozhin comes from Soviet Leningrad. Nowadays, it's Saint Petersburg. Yevgeny Prigozhin, from the scratch, was a criminal. After a sport boarding school, Yevgeny Prigozhin decided to choose a criminal path, and eventually he follows it up to the modern days. So at the age of 18 in 1979, he committed his first crime. He stolen something, and for this he got 2 years of probation. So it was a felony. But later, at the age of 20, he committed even a worse crime. Yevgeny Prigozhin and a group of his friends were going around St. Petersburg looking for people to rob, and there was a lady who was going back from a restaurant pretty late alone, so they asked for a smoke, and when the lady started to search for something in the bag, they attacked her. Yevgeny Prigozhin started to choke her until she lost her mind. They've stolen the golden earrings and also the boots. They literally took the boots from a lady. Biography of Yevgeny Prigozhin starts from stealing boots from a woman whom he choked until she almost died. But it was only the start of criminal activity of Yevgeny Prigozhin at his 20s. He and his friend committed this burglary. They robbed an apartment in St. Petersburg and stolen 177 rubles. And was the only first case. The next day, 2nd of March, he and his buddies tried to rob another apartment, and basically they succeeded. They've stolen 2 radios, 2 rugs, and crystal tableware. Yes, this is the burglary of the Soviet person. You steal radios and you steal tablewares. 2 weeks later, they did the same, but to another apartment. They again stole crystal tableware, the most precious thing Soviet babushka can have. 20th of March, Yevgeny Prigozhin scammed a guy who was trying to buy jeans in the USSR, and as you know, it was a deficit product. It was almost prohibited product, so you couldn't buy it just an ordinary clothing store. They've scammed the guy for 250 rubles, which was a big summary for those days. And they just took the money and left the guy on the car. So during those days, he and his friends also involved underage teenager to drink alcohol with them and to commit those crimes. Yevgeny Prigozhin was caught, and in 1981, he was sentenced to 13 years of jail. However, he was behaving well, and after 9 years of being in jail, he was amnestied. Once he left jail, he got some connections from his previous criminal activity, and he's got some friends, and of course he's got some capital after, robbing all of those apartments. So he started his first business. In 1990, 1 year before the collapse of the USSR, he started to sell hot dogs. And it was the first business like this in Saint Petersburg. So he was innovator of Saint Petersburg of selling hot dogs. After hot dogs, his friend from a sport boarding school offered him to participate in managing the grocery store network called Contrast, and he became a part owner, a half owner. 6 years after that, Yevgeny Prigozhin opened a first elite restaurant, which was called Staraya Tamozhnya, which translates as Old Customs, and it was the first elite restaurant, truly elite restaurant in St. Petersburg. At those times, there was not much of a competitions on the market of super elite restaurants because people were poor and only super rich oligarchs and people connected to the government could basically afford a lunch or a dinner at such a place. So they've invested $350,000 to that, and of course, it kind of paid off because there were many rich criminals and many influential people in St. Petersburg at those times. And this is a place where, as rumor says, he firstly met Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin at those days were a head of foreign relationship at the mayor's office of St. Petersburg. And mayor of St. Petersburg, Anatoly Sobchak, would often go to that restaurant Staraya Tamorzhnya, that firstly truly elite restaurant of Yevgeny Prigozhin. And of course, all of the people from mayor's office also used to go there because, if the mayor goes there, we also should go there. Yevgeny Prigozhin was trying to use the restaurant to get to know with really powerful and influential people. So he would serve important guests all by himself. And he would continue to do this for a couple of more years, even later, with other guests, with Putin especially, even with George Bush. Later, Yevgeny Prigozhin opened a new elite restaurant, which was called New Island, and it was the first restaurant in Saint Petersburg that was built on a ship. Eventually, it made Prigozhin even more influential and successful because he could meet many more famous and influential people there and to talk to them personally. For example, in 1999, two very powerful people were having a really important conversation on the boat of New Island in the restaurant of Yevgeny Prigozhin, and it was the Prime Minister of Russia, Sergei Stepashin, and the head of International Monetary Fund, Michel Camdessus. And Sergei Stepashin was asking International Monetary Fund to give $4 billion as a loan to Russia, and eventually it was a successful deal. And during those negotiations, guess who was serving the dishes for the people? Of course, Yevgeny Prigozhin. In 2001, on the board of New Island, Putin had a dinner with the president of France, Jacques Chirac, and Putin really liked it because Yevgeny Prigozhin was serving the dishes all by himself. That's why in 2002, Putin invited George W. Bush on the boat of New Island to have a dinner. And later, in 2003, Putin as a president himself had his private birthday party on this New Island ship, and Yevgeny Prigozhin was serving the dishes for everyone, and sometimes he was even invited to sit at the table with a powerful guest, with the president of Russia himself. Media also mentioned that during those times he was able to get well not only with Putin but also with the head of security of Putin, with Zolotov, and with other people who were used to surround Putin. Yevgeny Prigozhin wanted to use his influence and connections to build a big business, so he started this chain of Russian traditional fast food, which was called Blin'Donald's, a Russian answer to Mcdonald's, and they were serving blini, which is basically Eastern European pancakes. They are pretty popular not only in Russia, but in many Eastern European countries. So they were trying to basically fight McDonald's, but I guess Soviet people, ex-Soviet people, Russian people didn't want it to eat blini, which they can eat at home, but they wanted to try the taste of America, the taste of West. So they would go to McDonald's, to Burger King, to KFC, to anything else. The chain of Prigozhin Blin'Donald's was not able to compete with those. And in 2012, they've closed it with a big losses of money. Prigozhin decided to use his influence and connections in another way to make money, and basically it's called catering. He won the rights to serve food for International Economic Forum in Saint Petersburg, which is one of the most elite events in Russia, because usually Putin used to go there to give some speeches about economy, and other famous oligarchs used to go there. So, getting rights to serve this event is like winning a lottery. And Yevgeny Prigozhin, because of his connections, he won it. Later, he was also catering the food for inauguration of Dmitry Medvedev when he became a president in 2008. Later, Yevgeny Prigozhin became a monopolist in the sphere of serving food for schools, and in a couple of years, he got governmental contracts for serving foods to the schools, to the governmental schools, for 51 billion rubles, which are about 63 millions of dollars. Because of serving food for Moscow schools, there was a first public scandal with Yevgeny Prigozhin, which kind of put him out of the shade. The scandal happened because of the condition of the food they were serving to canteens in schools. They were using the meat of the third category, which is the category only purpose for dogs or for some animals on the farms, which are not really edible for humans, or maybe edible but not the best for humans to eat. And they were using that meat to save money to serve to the Russian Moscowite schoolers. Yevgeny Prigozhin also won some governmental contracts to provide food for the Russian military, and as far as we know, he still continue to provide food for the Russian military, for the military bases. Also, he started to provide food for Ministry of Emergency Situations, and he started to do these public utilities for closed cities in Russia. In 2016, the husband of Lyubov Sobol a famous politician, oppositioner in Russia who used to be part of Navalny Foundation. Her husband was attacked by the entrance of his house, and some random man put a needle with drugs into his bag. And basically, they were trying to kill the husband of Lyubov Sobol. And eventually, Lyubov Sobol was the first opposition, the first politician who started to speak about Yevgeny Prigozhin and his influence on Kremlin, his connections with Kremlin, and how he makes money in a corrupt way. Lyubov Sobol also made the first investigation about the so-called Fabric of Trolls. Fabric of Trolls, or official name of this, is Internet Research Agency, is an organization which was created by Prigozhin to answer the criticism Prigozhin would receive on the internet. And Prigozhin would receive a lot of criticism. Well, firstly, for serving bad quality food for Moscowite scholars. And they were fighting any kind of criticism towards Putin or Prigozhin. They also started to critique and to write different kind of negative comments under the videos of Russian liberals, of Russian oppositions. They even have a couple of offices in Moscow and Saint Petersburg. And as far as we know, more than 150 people work in those offices for the needs of Prigozhin to form a public opinion on something. And it's actually really interesting sometimes when I read comments under my videos, and some of them are in Russian or in English. I try to understand if this person is a, as we say, Kremlin bot, is a person from a fabric of Prigozhin, or it is a real person opinion. The connection of Yevgeny Prigozhin to that Internet Research Agency was opened during the investigation of the new newspaper in 2013, and later the special prosecutor of the United States, Robert Mueller, he also said that Yevgeny Prigozhin stands behind the Internet Research Agency, or so-called Fabric of Trolls, because Fabric of Trolls were trying to get involved into the elections of the president in the US in 2016. Later in 2018, Yevgeny Prigozhin and its organizers were prosecuted in absentia, so they won it by FBI. Yevgeny Prigozhin used to reject his connection to Fabric of Trolls by any means, and even about existence of that. But recently, in February 2023, so a couple of months ago, he said, "I was never just an investor of agency of internet research. I've created a concept, I created it, I was managing it for a long time, but I was only telling you about the business part of Yevgeny Prigozhin, of his biography. But however, nowadays he is famous to the whole world, and especially to the Russians, because of his participation and because of his creation in Wagner private military company. There are many theories about how the PMC Wagner appeared to be, but as far as I've read in different medias, it says that it's not the project of Prigozhin from the scratch. It was a project of Russian GRU, intelligence service of Russia, and they made Putin to create this, to participate and to use those mercenaries in different conflicts outside of Russia, and basically to try to look for a loophole, not to be responsible by using those, because basically using mercenaries is a crime, international crime. Putin was looking for a person, a trustworthy person, to whom he can give the rights to manage this private military group. At first, members of Wagner were seen in Donbass in 2014, but later they started to participate in conflicts in the countries of Africa. Some media say that the goal of participating in conflicts in Africa for Prigozhin was to open those gold mining productions in the Central African Republic and in Sudan, and also to get money from local governments for training their soldiers. I think that one of the chevrons of Wagner kind of tells for the organization itself. It says, our business is death, and our business is going well. I want to remind you that mercenary in Russia is prohibited by law. It's a felony, and if you participate in any kind of mercenary, you will get to jail minimum to the 12 years, maximum to 18 years. But not a single member of Wagner PMC appears to be in jail for participating in this. And moreover, there is an advertisement of Wagner Orchestra. This is how they call it because it's named after the Richard Wagner, who was a German composer from the 19th century. The advertisement of Wagner PMC is all over Russia and nobody fights against it. So by law it's prohibited, by reality it's even being protected by the government. The only country that could do that in the world is Russia, I think, because they've opened a Wagner Center in Saint Petersburg, a huge office of private military Mercenary Group in the second largest city of Russia, in Saint Petersburg. And in that center, they have different kind of events. I think they try to hire people, and people who want to be hired by Wagner, they can come there, have some exams, some examinations, some training, and then be sent to the war against Ukraine or to other conflicts. And also they try to get some IT workers to be trained in a military way there. So that's kind of crazy for a country to have an office of private mercenary group. And Vladimir Putin allows everything this personally himself. This is why Yevgeny Prigozhin even got a star of a hero of Russia, which is only being assigned by the president of Russia. Officially, nobody is responsible for the acts of the private mercenary group of Wagner. This is why they can do whatever they want with the highest level of cruelty. Traditionally in Wagner, betrayers, those who betrayed Wagner and switched to the sides or just left, are being hunted and then killed by the huge hammer. And this is what the whole world's seen in Ukraine. But they used to do this even before the Ukrainian war. In 2016, the Syrian deserter from Bashar Assad army was killed and tortured, and then his body was burned by the Wagner PMC members. And as far as I remember, Novaya Gazeta, new newspaper, even recognized who were those people who tortured and killed the guy. Since Putin started the war against Ukraine 24th of February 2022, mercenaries of Wagner were more important not in Africa or Syria, they were more important in Ukraine. So they came there and their numbers are not high. Before the war, Wagner was only looking for people with a real combat experience, usually for veterans of Chechen wars, sometimes even Afghan wars, people who got the real experience. They were only hiring those, and those people are even in deficit in the Russian military. So once they came to Ukraine, their numbers were just not enough to have some success in Ukraine. So they started to hire just anyone, and many people were going to them for the money basically, and they were paying more than 200,000 of rubles, something about $3,000 per month for a ordinary mercenary, which is a huge amount of money for Russia. And later Yevgeny Prigozhin understood that without big numbers of people, it's not possible to have any success. So he started to hire people from prisons. Yes, prisoners who committed heavy crimes, felonies, killed, murderers, rapers. They've started to hire all of those people to participate in the war against Ukraine. The ex-prisoner himself, Yevgeny Prigozhin, understood that many of the prisoners would be glad to go and die or try to get amnestied for participating in the war against Ukraine. I guess Yevgeny Prigozhin himself would be glad when he was in his 20s to go and fight somewhere for half a year to get amnestied, then be rotting behind the bars for many, many years. In August 2022, the first video of hiring process from the prison was published on the internet, and there Prigozhin was saying that he started to recruit prisoners, and for half of the year of the service, they will be amnestied. Firstly, we are interested in murderers and robbers. You will like it with us. This is what Yevgeny Prigozhin said at that first video published on the internet about recruiting prisoners. There are many estimations of how many people Yevgeny Prigozhin was able to hire from the prisons. Human rights organization Gulagu.net says that Vladimir Putin said to Yevgeny Prigozhin to hire at least 20,000 of people from prisons. In December 2022, the representative of the United States National Security Council, John Kirby, he claimed that the amount of PMC Wagners who are fighting in Ukraine are about 50,000 people, and 40,000 of those are prisoners. While the Human Rights Fund, Russia Behind the Bars, who works with the criminals, says that 42 or 43,000 of people were hired from prisons by Wagner. It's interesting that the official representative of the Ministry of Defense, Igor Konashenkov, in his summaries from the battlefront, he never ever mentions Wagner. Never. Like, they do not exist. However, on the TV, Wagner has been mentioned quite often, and in public, Yevgeny Prigozhin claims, yes, we are fighting there, and we are doing all the best to win against neo-Nazis Ukrainians. Someone in the Russian media is even saying that Wagner soldiers are like elite of Russia, and they are being, some of the killed are being buried with honors, but I would say they are more like cannon fodder. Wagner is mostly being used in Donetsk direction. The biggest clusters of the squads of Wagner were seen in Ugledar, also in Bakhmut, and in Solidar. The battle for Bakhmut is lasting already for more than 8 months, and some of the military experts even compare this battle to Verdun, one of the biggest bloody battles of the First World War, and the battlefield nowadays in Bakhmut, it also looks like the First World War. Not a single house, not a single meter of the ground was not hit, as we also know that the official military of Russia is not participating in this battle of Bakhmut, so this is the only battle of Wagner PMC members. I will tell you about the way they use prisoners in this war, because prisoners are untrained people without, let's say, motivation. They don't know what war do they fight, and they understand if they will go back, they will be killed. So they are basically the cannon fodder. And they're being given a couple of grenades, and they're being said, if you are being surrounded and you understand that there is no way you will get out of it, make sure to kill yourself with this grenade, and also to kill some Ukrainians who are going to capture you. In November 2022, the whole world was shocked by the video of execution one of the prisoners who was captured by Ukrainians. Then, on the interview, he said that he would like to join the Ukrainian army, and eventually he was exchanged as a captured soldier with the Russian side, and Russian official army gave him to Wagner. And Wagner, they kill the traitors, as they say, with a hammer. And this is eventually what they did to the guy. They killed the guy with a hammer, and there is a full video on the internet, you can find it, but I'm not gonna show it to you. That video was made to demonstrate to other prisoners, this is what's going to happen to you if you betray us. Even if you get being captured by Ukrainians, you exchanged, this is what is going to happen. January 2023, official media of Russia, which tends to lie or make the number smaller, they claim that more than 100 ex-prisoners were amnestied for serving half a year in Wagner and somehow surviving. Well, I guess it's like less than 1% of people who eventually got into Wagner as prisoners. So they were amnestied, and of course, Putin amnestied himself, because only the president of Russia has rights to amnesty prisoners. So he signed the order to amnesty those people himself. And of course, that order was secreted right away, and they have a right to secret it, because they don't want to give world the names of the people who killed Ukrainians just to get themselves freedom. Some of those ex-prisoners got home to their hometowns, to their home regions, villages, and committed some even more worse crime. And it's just hilarious and scary at the same time. There was a guy who killed his wife like 5 years ago, got in jail and got 10 years of sentence in jail, then got hired by Wagner to kill Ukrainians, killed Ukrainians for half a year, and then he came back home, killed poor babushka. Police cannot arrest him. Literally, they cannot arrest him because they are afraid that Prigozhin is gonna do something to their police department.
Ванька идет, говорит, все орет. В одной руке, говорит, пиво, во второй, говорит, я не помню, говорит, не знаю, говорит, пакет, не знаю, что. Во второй руке у него вилы. Вилы, топор, нож. И идет, орет. Убью всех, перережу всю семью. Орет.
Prigozhin decided to solve this problem by taking this guy back to the fight, but as far as I understand, he's just gonna be lectured and not being sent to fight again. And this is only one case. There are many more cases. Ill people gonna come back who are only capable of killing people and who are only used to kill people. Let's say about Yevgeny Prigozhin as a public figure, because before 2022 he was trying to do his best not to become a public figure. However, in 2022 almost every Russian got to know about Prigozhin because of his videos from Bakhmut. At some moment, Prigozhin started to publicly criticize the official army of Russia. He was saying that they are not doing enough for the Russian victory in this war. He was also criticizing the Ministry of Defense of Russia, especially Sergei Shoigu, who is like the head of it, and Gerasimov, who is one of the responsible people for the special Ukrainian military operation. He was criticizing them for not providing enough ammunition and shells for the Wagner PMC. However, I think it was not made intentionally, just Russian army is just not providing enough ammunition for any kind of military groups, military squads they have, and Wagner is not an exception. We just hear it publicly because Prigozhin is pretty famous right now. But some other military experts were saying that the Ministry of Defense is not giving enough ammunition and shells to Prigozhin because they want Prigozhin to say sorry for the Ministry of Defense. Because even before that hunger of shells, as they say it, Prigozhin was criticizing the heads of the Ministry of Defense. And of course, they are the people who have the honor. Yeah, Russian officers have the honor. Wow, it sounds kind of funny nowadays, right? There are rumors that Prigozhin is going to create his own political movement, which later can grow into a political party. And this is going to be, as we understand, something like replacement of Zhirinovsky, who used to be like the main nationalist of Russia and who died a year ago. And also, he's going to try to capture the audience of Navalny, those who are not against the war and those who used to hear criticism of the government. And yes, Prigozhin used to criticize low-level officials, Ministry of Defense, others, but never Putin himself. Because, guess what? He's dependent on Putin. If it's not Putin, he's gonna be no one. Prigozhin is interested in this war to prolong, to continue as long as possible. Because during this war, he gets tons, millions, billions of rubles, of dollars to provide for Wagner, and of course, he can keep those money for himself as far as he continues this battle in Bakhmut. Also, he got this political influence growing in Russia because before the war, not many Russians knew about him. Yes, they knew this is some kind of oligarch from Putin's surroundings, and yes, he used to be called a cook of Putin, a chef of Putin for serving him food, and there is this famous picture when Prigozhin is serving food for Putin, and Putin is like reacting to this with such a funny face. But nowadays, almost everyone, including my relatives, at least they've heard about Prigozhin. So this war is only profitable by any means for Yevgeny Prigozhin, and he is interested to prolong this war as long as possible. Why do I think that the figure of Yevgeny Prigozhin is really interesting nowadays? Because later, when the war is going to be over, when the regime is going to be over in Russia, in the history books of Russia, about Russian modern history, people will see what happened with Russia in 23 years of Putin rule. Russia became a country where the official army is just nothing but private armies of some of his friends taking those positions, taking those roles. Prisoners are being released from prisons to kill even more people. Honors, those badges of heroes of Russia, are being given to the ex-criminals, to the people who are famous to the whole world as executors, unofficial executors, criminals. So this is what happened after 23 years of Putin's rule of Russia. So yeah, it was me, Zach the Russian. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you liked it, and I hope this war will end soon. And Slava Ukraini, glory to Ukraine, and freedom to Russia. See ya.